So I thought I'd just start chapter 15 by showing you my dog buddy. Okay, so here we go. So all he wants to do all day is just catch the ball. All he wants to do, or frisbee, or stick. Whereas the other dog we have, Abby, she doesn't like that at all. At the moment I've just got a few vegetables growing here, so I've just got spring onions. There are actually radishes in there. I wonder if you can guess what these are. So they're just sort of purple colour. And here we've got some cucumbers growing, courgettes, got some parsley there, and lovely there, some nice peas growing, but you can see the caterpillars have been eating those, and we've got some nice strawberries growing, tomatoes growing. Okay, it's not chapter 15, it's actually chapter 16. Okay, and Joey now seems to be in no man's land, almost like trapped in barbed wire. So probably doesn't know which way to go, because one way is where the Germans are and one way is where the British are, or the Allied troops, so maybe the French as well. So chapter 16. From both sides of me I heard a gradual crescendo of excitement and laughter rippled along the trenches, interspersed with barked orders that everyone was to keep their heads down and no one was to shoot. From my vantage point on the mound I could see only an occasional glimpse of a steel helmet. My only evidence that the voices I was hearing did indeed belong to real people. There was a sweet smell of cooking food wafting towards me, and I lifted my nose to savour it. It was sweeter than the sweetest bran mash I'd ever tasted, and it had a tiny tinge of salt about it. It was drawn first one way and then the other by the promise of warm food, but each time I neared the trenches on either side, I met an impenetrable barrier of loosely coiled barbed wire. The soldiers cheered me on as I came closer, showing their heads fully now over the trenches and beckoning me towards them. When I had to turn back at the wire and cross no man's land to the other side, I was welcomed again, there by a chorus of whistling and clapping. But again I could find no way through the wire. I must have crisscrossed no man's land for much of that morning, and found at long last in the middle of this blasted wilderness a small patch of coarse, dank grass growing on the lip of an old crater. So you can see that on one side, so the British troops, come on, this way, and the German troops whistling, this way. Everybody had stopped fighting for that instance. Everybody was fixated on this horse, trying to get that horse to safety. But then think, what would happen if they tried to go and rescue the horse? The British tried to rescue the horse, would the Germans shoot? The Germans tried to rescue the horse, would the British shoot? I was busying myself at tearing the last of the grass away when I saw, out of the corner of my eye, a man in grey uniform clamber up out of the trenches, waving a white flag above his head. Why would he do that? Why would he wave a white flag? And grey, is that British or German? I looked up as he began to clip his way methodically through the wire and then pull it aside. All this time there was much argument and noisy consternation from the other side, and soon a small helmeted figure in a flapping khaki greatcoat climbed up into no man's land. He too held up a white handkerchief in one hand and began also to work his way through the wire towards me. The German was through the wire first, leaving a narrow gap behind him. He approached me slowly across no man's land, calling out to me all the while to come towards him. He reminded me at once of dear old Friedrich, for he was like Friedrich, a grey-haired man in an untidy and buttoned uniform, and he spoke gently to me. In one hand he held a rope, in the other he stretched out towards me. He was still far too far away for me to see clearly, but an offered hand, in my experience, was often cupped, and there was enough promise in that for me to limp cautiously towards him. So it'd be sort of like that. Also, it's sort of lowered down. On both sides, the trenches were lined now with cheering men, standing on the parapets, waving their helmets above their heads. "Oh, boyo!" The shout came from behind me. It was urgent enough to stop me. I turned to see the man in khaki weaving and jinking his way across no man's land, and one held a handkerchief high above his head, carrying the white handkerchief. "Oi, boyo! Where are you going? Hang on a bit! You're going the wrong way, see?" The two men were coming towards me. Could have not been more different. The one in grey was the taller of the two, and he came nearer, and I could see his face was lined and creased with years. Everything about him was slow and gentle under his ill-fitting uniform. He wore no helmet, but instead the peakless cap with the red band I knew so well, sitting carelessly in the back of his head. The little man in khaki reached us, out of breath, his red face, and still smooth with his youth, his round helmet with his broad rim fallen askew over one ear. For a few strained, silent moments, the two stood yards apart from each other, eyeing one another warily, and not saying a word. It was the young man in khaki, the khaki greeny-brown colour, who broke the silence and spoke first. "Now what do we do?" he said, walking towards us and looking at the German, who stood head and shoulders above him. "There's two of us here, and one horse to split between us. Of course, King Solomon had the answer, didn't he now? But it's not practical in that case, is it? And what's worse, I can't speak a word of German. And I can see that you can't understand what the hell I'm talking about. Can you? Oh hell, I should never have come out here. I shouldn't. Can't think of what came over me, and for all the muddy old horse too. But I can speak little but English," said the older man, still holding out his cupped hand under my nose. It was full of black bread broken into pieces. A titbit I was familiar enough with, but usually fond too, bitter for my taste. However, I was not too hungry to be choosy, and as he was speaking, I soon emptied his hand. "I speak only a little English like a schoolboy, but it's enough, I think, for us, yeah?" And even as he spoke, I felt a rope slip slowly around my neck and tighten. "As for our other problems, since I've been here the first, then the horse is mine. Fair? No? Like your cricket." "Cricket? Cricket?" said the young man. "Who's ever heard of that barbarous game in Wales? That's a game for the rotten English. Rugby, that's my game. And that's not a game, that's a religion, that is. Where I come from, I played scrum half for Mustang before the war stopped me. A Mustang is, we say that lose our ball, is our ball." "Sorry," said the German, his eyebrows furrowed with concern. "I cannot understand what you mean by this." So in Wales, well, they do now, but Wales, their sport is rugby. That's their primary sport. Germans, they don't play cricket, so they find cricket all very confusing. "It doesn't matter, Jerry. Not important, not anymore. We could have settled all this peaceful like. Jerry, the war I mean, and I'd be back in the valley, and you'd be back in yours. Still not your fault, and I don't suppose, nor mine either, come to that." By now the cheering from both sides had subsided, and both armies looked out in total silence as the two men talked together beside me. The Welshman was stroking my nose and feeling my ears. "You know horses, then?" said the tall German. "How bad is his wounded leg? Is it broken, do you think? It seems not to walk on it." The Welshman bent over and lifted my leg gently and expertly, wiping away the mud from round the wound. Oh, he's in a right mess enough, but I don't think it's broken, Jerry. It's a bad wound though, a deep gash, wire by the look of it. Got to get it seen to quick, else the poison will set in, and then there won't be a lot anyone could do for him. Cut like that, he must have lost a lot of blood already. Question is though, who takes him? We've got a veterinary hospital somewhere behind our lines that could take care of him. But I expect you've got one too. Yes, I think so. Somewhere it must be, but I do not know exactly where, the German said slowly, and then he dug deep in his pocket and produced a coin. You choose the side you want. Head or tail? I think you say. I will show you the coin to everyone on both sides, and everyone will show that whichever side wins, the horse is only by chance. Then no one loses any pride. Yes, and everybody will be happy. The Welshman looked up admiringly and smiled. All right then, you go ahead, Jerry. You show them the coin, and then you toss and I'll call. The German held the coin up in the sun, and then turned a full slow circle before spinning it high and glinting into the air. As it fell to the ground, the Welshman called out in a loud, resonant voice, so that all the world could hear. Heads! Well, said the German, stooping to pick it up, that's the face of my Kaiser, looking up at me out of the mud. And he does not look pleased with me. So I'm afraid you have won. The horse is yours. Take good care of him, my friend. And he picked up the rope again and handed it to the Welshman. As he did so, he held out his other hand in a gesture of friendship and reconciliation, a smile lighting his warm face. In an hour, maybe or two, he said, we will try our best again, each other to kill each other. Ha! God knows why we do it, and I think he may be forgotten. Goodbye, Welshman. We have shown them, haven't we? We have shown them that any problem can be solved between people if only they can trust each other. That's all it needs, no? The Welshman shook his head in disbelief as he took the rope. Jerry boyo, I think if they would let you and me have an hour or two here together, we could sort out this whole wretched mess. There'd be no more weeping widows and crying children in my valley, and no more in yours. If the worst came to the worst, we could decide it all with a flip of a coin. Couldn't we now? If we did, said the German with a chuckle, if we did it that way, then we would be our turn to win. Huh? And maybe your Lord George would not like that. He put his hand onto the Welshman's shoulders for a moment. Now take care, my friend, and look good. Auf Wiedersehen, and he turned away and walked slowly back across no man's land to the wire. Same to you, boyo, Welshman shouted after him, and then he turned too and led me away back towards the line of khaki soldiers, who began now to laugh and cheer with delight as I limped towards them through the gap in the wire. So just see how both sets of soldiers, resolved the situation. They don't hate each other, the soldiers, but they're just fighting a battle that they've been told to fight. And that's all they know. But, you know, it was good to see that, basically, you know, with the horse being there, with Joey being there, that they basically had a ceasefire for that couple of hours. And they shook hands with each other, and there was no fighting. It was just all very civilized. So I think that is really fantastic. So Joey now, see what sort of happened. He's originally was with the British troops. Then he went over to the German troops. Now he's back with the British troops. So I wonder how life is going to be different for him. He's with the British. Is he going to be worked like he was by the Germans? He is shattered, and just hopefully the British will recognise that. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. Next chapter is chapter 17. just stop it for there.